We are here at the first ever WWE vs. AEW Worlds Collide, and it kicks off with a banger match between Penta, the Intercontinental Champion, and AEW's Kyle Fletcher. And these two start off with a stare down and then a handshake, which Kyle Fletcher doesn't accept, and Penta immediately hits a super kick. And these two start beating each other up and putting on a banger to start this Worlds Collide off. But at some point in the match, Penta hits a high-flying move and throws Kyle Fletcher back into the ring and hits a superplex. And then hits a top rope Mexican destroyer. Penta thinks it's over. 1, 2, kick out by Kyle Fletcher. And then he starts feeding off this electric crowd tonight and hits a brain buster, but he's not done. Kyle Fletcher hits a second brain buster, this time from the top rope. Cover 1, 2, 3. Kyle Fletcher wins the first match, beating Penta. But next up, we have a battle of friends between the role model Bayley and this will be formerly known as Sasha Banks. And these two start off with a stare down and a handshake. This is about these two are friends. And immediately Sasha Banks starts the match off with a big move. Like it's barely a 2 count, but Bayley also shows the different side of her in this match. And these two know each other very well from their NXT and WWE days. And Bayley also starts firing off this electric crowd tonight. Even hitting a Bayley to belly suplex in this match. But it doesn't get her the 3 count, she needs more. But then Sasha Banks hits a very familiar move. She hits Bayley's move, the Rose Plant. But Bayley kicks out of her own finisher. Then she hits not 1, not 2, but 3 suplexes in a row. And then hits a suplex into a backstabber. She thinks it's over, but Bayley has to kick out. Then Sasha Banks hits her finisher, her new finisher, and she thinks it's definitely over. 1, 2, but Bayley somehow kicks out. And then as Sasha Banks looks for a maneuver, Bayley throws her and hits the big elbow, and then immediately follows it up with the Rose Plant to get the 1, the 2, and the 3. Bailey has won her match against her friend. But now it is time for the match that everyone has been waiting for. The match between the Visionary, the Revolutionary, Seth freaking Rollins, who go up against none other than Will Ospreay. This is a dream match. This is one match that everyone was hoping for. And these two start off with a stare down, but then Will Ospreay immediately hits the Stormbreaker, and it connects. Is Seth out already? 1, 2, kick out by Seth. But then immediately after, Seth hits a curb stomp and pins Will Ospreay. Is Will Ospreay done? But a kick out. Both men have traded their finishers. And now Seth Rollins hits a suicide dive, but not just one suicide dive. He goes back in the ring and hits a second suicide dive and throws Will Ospreay back into the ring and looks for a stomp. But Will Ospreay hits a very familiar counter, and then he hits the cutthroat covered by Will Ospreay. But a kick out by Seth, surprisingly. But then Will Ospreay gets distracted and gets hit with the pedigree. 1, 2, kick out by Will Ospreay. And Will Ospreay starts firing off the crowd. Both of these men are getting cheered in this match. And a cutter by Will Ospreay. And then Will Ospreay hits a second Stormbreaker. He thinks it's over. Seth Rollins has already kicked out of many maneuvers, and another kick out by Seth Rollins. But as Seth Rollins reverses, he throws Will Ospreay to the ref and looks for a maneuver. But Will Ospreay hits a third Stormbreaker and covers Seth Rollins, but there's no ref to count the pin. As Will Ospreay desperately grabs a chair, the ref sees it and takes it from Will Ospreay. But off the distraction, Seth Rollins hits not just one curb stomp, but a second curb stomp and pins Will Ospreay. 1, 2, 3. Seth Rollins has won against Will Ospreay. But now it is time for Toni Storm to take on Rhea Ripley. The WWE Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley. And these two start off locking up, but it's Rhea Ripley who gets the upper hand with the punches and strikes. And she just throws Toni Storm and looks for a move, but Toni Storm counters it into a German suplex and then starts stopping Rhea and just disrespects Rhea. And then hits a drop kick and more big moves on Rhea Ripley. But Rhea fires back with a big power slam and she starts hitting her own stomps. And then Rhea hits that headbutt into the Razor's Edge at some point in the match and follows it up with the Riptide. She thinks it's over. But a kick out by Toni Storm, and then as Rhea looks for a kick, Toni Storm counters it and then hits Rhea with a sit-out powerbomb. 1, 2, kick out by Rhea, but then Toni Storm immediately follows it up with a pile driver, and she thinks it's over. But a kick out by Rhea. Then as these two start trading strikes, it's when they get into a hockey fight. And it's Toni Storm that gets the upper hand and hits a beautiful DDT and follows it up with a submission. And it's too much for Rhea, and Rhea fades. Toni Storm wins. But now it is time for the main event. The AEW champion MJF taking on the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes, the undisputed champion. And these two have so much history. These two start off with a stare down, and then they immediately start trading blows, and then it turns into a hockey fight. And these two put on an absolute banger of a match. These two over-expect and steal the show. But it's at some point in the match where both of these men trade their signature blows. But it's MJF who gets the upper hand and MJF hits his finisher on Cody, the Heat Seek DDT cover. 1, 2, Cody kicks out in the late stages, but as MJF looks for maybe a brain buster, Cody reverses it into not just one crossroads, not just 2 crossroads, but 3 crossroads to pin MJF and win for his team. Cody Rhodes is celebrating his win for WWE. But then suddenly, WWE might have won the battle, but AEW won the war.